So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to an overview of the 2023 Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program, which is offered by the Office of Digital Humanities here at the National Endowment for the Humanities. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I do want to note that we are recording this webinar and note that because of the way we record them, some attendees' names may appear in the video that we later post on YouTube. It's a sort of a quirk of Microsoft Teams webinar. If you don't want your name to appear, you can change the name on your Teams account to anonymous, or you can also log off of the webinar and watch the recorded webinar when we make it available. And we'll be emailing everyone who joins today a link to the recording. So, to disclose what we're doing, I just wanted to let you know. But I am Jennifer Cerventi, and I am a Senior Program Officer here in the Office of Digital Humanities. But I am joined today by my colleagues and fellow Senior Program Officers, Elizabeth Tran and Sheila Brennan. You should feel free to pose questions anytime during the webinar in the chat section, which you can find on the menu bar, as those questions occur to you. And then we'll try to answer them either while it's happening or we'll save them to the end of today's session. A note about live captioning in Microsoft Teams. If you would like to turn on the live captioning for you, you'll find the 3 dots in the menu that you should see. Under that drop-down menu, you'll be able to turn on the live captions for you. During today's presentation, I will do the following. I'll review the mission of the Institutes for Advanced Topics program. I'll look at some of the funding statistics for this program over the years. We'll talk about deadlines and eligibility. We'll note what's new this round. We'll discuss about planning your application and how it will be reviewed. And then we'll point out some resources that we've made available. We'll remind you all of the dates that you want to keep in mind. And then we'll, of course, leave you with contact information so that you know where to send your drafts and to follow up with any questions that you may have. And then we'll try to end with time for your questions. Because the slide deck with the links and the YouTube recording will be available as soon as possible on the program resource page. I don't want you to feel that you need to copy down the information on every slide, but my colleagues will also be embedding some links in the chat feature as well. So you're interested in the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities. Let's just sort of do a high-level sort of reminder of what the program is. This is the program in the Office of Digital Humanities that supports professional development programs. We think it's important in ODH to provide opportunities for humanities professionals, scholars, graduate students to continue to learn about new approaches and methods in the digital humanities and consider what they have learned, how they might apply that to their own work. The goal of this program is to increase the number of humanities scholars and practitioners using digital technologies in their research and to broadly disseminate that knowledge about advanced technology tools and methodologies relevant to the humanities. And we try to do that by funding institutes, workshops, seminars focused on continuing and professional development for folks such as I mentioned, graduate students, librarians, archivists, faculty members in the humanities, as well as those in related fields that are exploring or experimenting with in the humanities. So that may include computer scientists, information designers. Our goal with this program is to provide an opportunity to share ideas and methods that advance humanities research and teaching through the use of digital technologies by bringing together humanities scholars and digital technology specialists from different disciplines. We also hope that they'll introduce the digital humanities and topics under that umbrella to scholars who lack digital expertise, resources, or capacity at their home institutions. And finally, we hope that this program will text-based computing technologies, and to think about the integration of those approaches into humanities scholarship and teaching and engagement with public audiences. We also hope to build inclusive communities of inquiry and contribute to the intellectual vitality and professional development of the participants. Now, I will note this next slide, this slide right here, is strictly for illustrative purposes only. We certainly don't expect you to copy down all of these topics, but it is a handy visual reminder that the Institutes for Advanced Topics program can fund an enormous range of topics. And we are, of course, open to other ones that are not on this list. But we've tried to, in some ways, prime the pump a little bit to give you a sense of what might be possible. This program would also like to encourage you to consider working with the data sources and tools offered by our colleagues at the National Library of Medicine at the National Institutes of Health and LC Labs at the Library of Congress. NEH has long-standing partnerships with these federal institutions, and we want to recommend exploring the digital resources that they have made available and to consider how they might be incorporated into your offering. So if you're considering an institute, say, on the history of medicine and data visualization, or need a data set for an opportunity on using large-scale image analysis, my colleagues at the National Library of Medicine or the Library of Congress may be able to help. In the Notice of Funding Opportunity on page 2, you'll find the names and email addresses for points of contact at these two sites. And I want to encourage you to reach out to them with your ideas and see how they may help. I think it's always really helpful to sort of get a sense of the program. If you're going to put in work to put an application in, a sense of sort of how it might fit. So let's look at some historical statistics for this program. Over the last 5 years of the program, we've made 23 awards with an average funding ratio of 30%. And I will note that is a tremendously favorable funding ratio. And I hope that you keep that in mind as you're considering applying for funding. We fund a relatively high percentage of applications to this program. And to get a sense of the history of the program, you can visit the NEH database of funded projects, read the white papers written by past Institute for Advanced Topics directors. We provided the links on the slide, and I see my colleague is actually also embedding them in the chat as well. Now, for the upcoming 2023 Institute for Advanced Topics competition, we anticipate having approximately $850,000 available for sort of the whole program, and we hope to make between 3 and 6 awards. Speaking of deadlines, this program has one deadline per year. So February 15th, 2023 is it. It will be that deadline. So, and for the first time, these applications, February 2023 seems just too soon, and I understand it might be. You can actually use these materials that we've made available to start planning for the 2024 deadline as well. But let's review some eligibility requirements. Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities are made to institutions and not individuals, meaning that an eligible institution will be submitting your application via grants.gov on behalf of the project team. And only U.S. and territorial 501c3 nonprofit organizations, accredited institutions of higher education, state and local government agencies, and federally recognized Native American tribal governments are eligible to apply to this program and to receive subawards through this program. That means that for-profit and non-U.S. organizations are not eligible to apply to direct one of these opportunities. I do want to sort of point out another eligibility requirement in the Institute's program, and that is that individuals may serve only as a project director or co-project director on one application per deadline. But that does not mean that you can't serve as an Institute faculty on more than one application or serve as a project director on one application and be listed as a faculty on another, but you just can't apply to direct more than one per deadline. Before starting your application, you'll definitely we want you to do a quick check to be sure that you're in the right funding opportunity. ODH remains the home for funding professional development opportunities in the digital humanities, but there are several other options for funding professional development opportunities across the humanities that may be of interest to you. My colleagues in the Division of Education Programs offer the Institutes for Higher Education faculty or K through 12 educators. My colleagues in the Division of Preservation and Access offer the education and training program to develop the knowledge and skills among professionals responsible for preserving and establishing access to humanities collections. And if you're interested in holding a conference or a symposium or a workshop, so less focused on professional development, but with other goals in mind, you might want to check out the collaborative research in our Division of Research Programs. And right here in the Office of Digital Humanities, we offer both the Digital Humanities Advancement Grant Program and our new Dangers and Opportunities of Technology program that can also support conferences, symposium, and project planning workshops. We have a link in the slide, and we'll put one in the chat, to a blog post that's designed to help you navigate all of the options for funding digital humanities across the NEH. And in fact, it was just updated a few days ago with all of the new programs currently available across the endowment. There may be a number, so as you can see, there may be a number of options that you might consider. And I want to strongly sort of encourage you, if you have questions about where it might fit, to get in touch with us early so that we, along with our colleagues across the agency, can help you find the right funding program that will support the professional development or training opportunity that you want to offer. Sometimes we'll get 2 or 3 folks into a call together to help you to offer good advice. I do want to note a few activities that the Institute's program explicitly does not fund. Now, we have a full set of restrictions that are found in the Notice of Opportunity on page 27 of the notice, but I want to call your attention in particular to 3 of them. The Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities does not support graduate or undergraduate courses or programs in the digital humanities. We don't support programs that are not regional, meaning multi-state or national in scope. And we don't support institutes that are held outside of the United States or its jurisdictions. Now, for the first 2 of those bullets that I pointed out, we may have other funding opportunities across the agency that can support those sorts of activities. But the Institutes for Advanced Topics is not the right one for you. But now that you've decided the Institutes is the right one for you, let's talk about what's new for 23 and 24. So as I mentioned, the notice of funding opportunity that we have available, it will apply for both deadlines. In that notice, we provide additional guidance on faculty and participant compensation and the importance of being explicit about how those members of your team are being compensated. We've embedded a resource for project evaluation. And for those projects that are partnering with another institution, perhaps as a co-host or a host via a sub-award, we now require sub-recipient budgets from those institutions as a separate attachment. So it's a little bit inside baseball grantsmanship, but that's something you'll want to sort of put on your list of things to not to miss. And I do want to sort of give you a sense of what we've funded in the past. You can visit the page on the NEH website that lists past and upcoming Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities. And I suspect you'll be amazed at the breadth and depth and the design of the institutes that have been offered over the years. For example, Vanderbilt University, in partnership with the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, is currently hosting a hybrid institute with both virtual and in-person components for a cohort of medievalists to provide theoretical and practical training in the creation and implementation of 3D objects and environments for research and teaching. The University of Pittsburgh just has offered a series of 2-day workshops to explore approaches to long-term sustainability in digital humanities projects. And the workshops were hosted at Pitt, but also Brigham Young University, Brown University, the Georgia Institute of Technology, and Oklahoma State University. So they, rather than having the participants come to one central location, they took their show on the road. Some more recent offerings, ones that were just funded the last round, include one from the Alexandria Archive Institute that will host virtual meetings and in-person workshops where participants will, quote, bridge theoretical and practical aspects of working with archaeological data. Another current opportunity that still has an open call for participants is from the History Lab team at Columbia University that will provide training for historians and archivists in processing and analyzing large-scale textual data sets. So let's talk money. Now that you're certain that the Institute's program is really something you want to look more deeply into, a few things to keep in mind. The program awards may be up to $250,000 in outright funds, and no matching is required for this program. For the 2023 deadline, the period of performance is up to 36 months. With a start date between September 1st, 2023 and September 21st, 2024. Now, the project certainly doesn't have to be 36 months, but that's sort of the longest it can be. The Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities program resource page is sort of where you want to get started. It serves as a dashboard, so to speak, for all things related to the application process. It's where you'll find what we call the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, which we used to at NEH call the guidelines page. But it is where you'll find links to all of the application materials, the budget guidance, frequently asked questions, sample funded applications, and budget due dates. And in fact, as you scroll down that page, this is actually maybe where you access today's webinar. So always sort of go back to that program resource page because it has a wealth of materials in addition to the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Now, of course, we are in the humanities, so reading is really important. We always recommend that you start by reviewing that Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO. The document, you want to download it. You want to read it a couple of times. You want to have this handy throughout the entire grant writing and submission process. And the reason why you should sort of have it available is you want to make sure you go through and identify all of the required components in the application early on. We don't want you, for example, scrambling 2 days before the deadline to try to gather letters of commitment from your institute faculty. We also want to have you have the NOFO serve as your guide for writing the application. You want to be careful to read and follow all of the instructions. Your application will not be considered eligible for review if it's late or if it does not satisfy all of the program requirements dictated in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, including things like page limits. So we do have some guidance right in the Notice of Funding Opportunity on pages 6 and 7 that really lay out sort of the basics that you need to know as you're pulling together the application. Be careful and obey all of the musts and should that are throughout the application. To help you keep track of these components, there is a checklist on pages 7 and 8 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. You'll see that some of these are grants.gov forms, whereas others are PDF attachments. The entire grant application will be submitted through the grants.gov portal by your Office of Sponsored Research or your Grants or Development Office. So if you're not representing that office, but you're sort of on the program side of the house, now is the time that you should start working with those colleagues to discuss responsibilities and expectations for completing the application on time. Do not arrive in their office on February 13th and ask them to submit an application for you by February 15th. Don't surprise them. But as the team begins sort of writing and developing the proposal, you want to use the application pieces to build your argument. Organize the narrative using the sections headings that we've provided for each section or component. Then notice crosswalks to demonstrate how the narrative and the application viewers. We've keyed them to the review criteria. I've identified those here in the list, and we'll talk through each of the review criteria on the next few slides. So the intellectual justification. We are, as I mentioned, the NEH. So humanities significance, the intellectual significance is the first criteria. It's first among many. You'll want to use that significance and impact and evaluation sections of the narrative to make the argument that your proposed project is important and needed. Ensure that your intellectual rationale is clear and persuasive. In other words, why do you want to do this? You want to be able to justify the digital methodology or technology that will be studied. You want to be sure to situate the proposed institute among others of a similar nature. So you can use that list of previously funded NEH institutes as a starting point. but you also perhaps can consult past offerings from the Digital Humanities Institute at, say, the University of Victoria, or those from the Humanities Intensive Learning and Teaching, the HILT Institutes offered at the University of Pennsylvania. And just because a topic has been previously addressed, that doesn't mean a new or revised offering isn't needed. Just be sure to clarify how this institute will build on that past work or break new ground. And if there's any prior IDEath recipients in today's webinar, you'll also need in your application to provide evidence that a second or third offering is warranted. How many applications did you receive? What did the evaluation say? So now we're going to move on to review criterion 2, which addresses the conception, definition, organization, and description of the program. This is the what of the proposed offering. In the narrative, as well as the curriculum and work plan, you'll need to justify the chosen format, in-person, virtual, hybrid for the proposed topic. You'll demonstrate that you and your team have considered how the components work together. Is there a good mix of lectures, discussion, hands-on activities, independent work? You want to show that you've thought about and allowed for adequate time for all of the proposed activities. It's one thing to have a full schedule, but it's another thing to have it so full that the participants really can't catch their breath. In the work plan attachment, you'll want to provide a clear sense of what will happen before, during, and after the active part of the institute. And be sure that it's clear who on the team is doing what. A work plan should always have people included in it. So, participant selection. And this is what criterion 3 is about. It's the for whom of the proposed project. And because participants are actually the heart of why you're proposing the institute. Under the significance and participant sections, you'll need to address the NOFO prompts around demonstrating that you've carefully thought about your intended audience. Who are you doing this for? You'll want to provide details about your recruitment strategies, as well as any outreach activities to particular communities of humanities faculty members and professionals. You want to describe plans for recruiting a diverse and inclusive pool of applicants, including those from historically underrepresented communities and individuals with disabilities. Be specific in the application and show that you're aware of their particular networks and affinity groups. You need to go to them. And then tell us how you will select your participants. When would you anticipate posting a call? Who will be on the selection committee? And if you're considering offering something multiple times and at multiple locations, who at those different locations will be responsible for getting the word out about them? So let's move on to criterion 4. This criteria addresses the appropriateness of the host institution or institutions and the institute team. This is what I call the by whom criterion. We need to know about the host institutions and their qualifications, and we also want to know about the expertise and level of commitment of the project team. In the institutional profile section, make the case about why you and your institution should host the offering. Describe any facilities and related resources that will support a collegial environment. Do you have special libraries or laboratories that the participants will have access to? Are there any field trips planned? If you're proposing an all virtual institute, and we've had some of those now, demonstrate that you have experience in hosting some of these activities in that format. And of course, the institute faculty are so crucial to this program. So in the staff, faculty, and consultant section of the application narrative, you'll want to demonstrate that the institute faculty are appropriate for the institute topics and activities. Then in the biographies attachment, you can provide further information about the project directors, the faculty, and other team members. Show that they have the experiences and the skills to contribute to the proposed institute. And just a note, do not submit and make the application ineligible for review. Follow the instructions in the biographies attachment. If funds are supporting a position without a named staff member, such as a project coordinator that you anticipate being filled by, say, a graduate student, be sure to include that position description in the biographies attachment, and that description adequately identifies the appropriate skills and experiences that will be needed for that individual. We also encourage applicants to include letters of commitment from the project team members as part of the application. Panelists will want to know that you have the right people aligned to the right topics in a cohesive way to provide a meaningful experience to the participants. Now, the final criteria is criterion 5, which is about the impact, the evaluation, and the budget. We ask you to describe your evaluation plan, both during and after the Institute. In other words, how will you know that you're meeting your goals? In the notice of funding opportunities, we've actually provided a reference to a resource on evaluating professional development if you're not sure where to start. Some of you may be on at institutions with internal evaluation offices. They might also be able to provide you some assistance with that component of the application. These offerings are about building communities around a particular topic or approach. So describe any activities in this section that you will have for sustaining that community after the active part of the Institute. For example, are you proposing a collaborative publication or the development of teaching resources? Ensure that those activities are included in this section and in the work plan and curriculum attachment. Be sure to budget time and funds for those activities as well. And of course, every Institute for Advanced topic has a website, so detail how that project website will showcase the Institute curriculum and participant work, and describe where that website will live. You really must budget appropriately for faculty and staff of the Institute. These projects can be quite labor intensive at times during the award period, and we at NEH and our panelists want to be sure that people are compensated appropriately for their labor. And finally, be sure to describe how participants will be compensated. For those institutes that have an in-person component, will you be offering travel reimbursement and per diem, or will you be offering a flat rate in the form of a stipend? There is no one way that we require, but we here in the Office of Digital Humanities want to ensure that cost is not a deterrent for participants. So think carefully about how to best ensure that your target audience can fully participate in your institute. So we're getting close, I promise. A few tips and reminders to as you're sort of pulling together your application. Remember, we are the NEH. I know I've said this a couple of times, but humanities significance is always key. No matter how amazing an offering may be, if it's not in the humanities, we can't fund it. Also have a clear sense of how you're going to use your expertise to build a community of digital humanities practitioners, and that you don't have to do it alone. Design a feasible offering with a reasonable budget. This is public funding, after all. We are a taxpayer-supported agency. And certainly be realistic about what you can accomplish in a proposed professional development opportunity. Depending on the topic and the target audience, a 2-day workshop can be just as valuable as a multi-week event and will provide for an opportunity for those who might not be able to take time away from their current work. So you'll want to clearly describe your intended participant audience and your plans for connecting with them. As I mentioned before, participants are at the heart of this program, and no matter how exciting an offering is, if it's not designed with a particular audience in mind and geared toward their needs, panels will have a difficult time recommending it for funding. So once you or your designated institutional representative presses submit within grants.gov, you may want to sort of know what happens. It takes about 6 to 7 months for NEH's rigorous multi-step review process to be completed. So this is what we're doing in the 6 to 7 months. It can seem long. After the application deadline, we spend some time reviewing all the submissions for eligibility and completeness. We then recruit up to 5 panelists with an appropriate mix of subject matter and methodological expertise to review these applications. And you might even have a previous institute director on the panel as well. Peer reviews have about 6 to 7 weeks to review and evaluate those proposals. And then the panel meets in a virtual space, sort of like this one actually, to discuss the applications in more detail. And then based on those conversations, staff will make a recommendation after the peer review process from guidance from that panel. And those recommendations are taken before our National Council on the Humanities, which meets 3 times a year. There are, in some ways, our board of directors. So that means for the Institutes for Advanced Topics program, with applications being received in February, they'll go to our July council on the National Council meeting. After that meeting, the NEH chair, Shelley Lowe, will consider all the advice and recommendations that she's received along the way. And by law, she will make the final decisions about these awards. And then finally, you, the applicants, are notified. We do understand that it's difficult to wait that long, but I hope this gives you a more concrete sense of why it takes a while to hear about a submitted application. And frankly, this is true anywhere within the endowment. It does take a while for us to finish the review process. Okay, a few things. The staff of the Office of Digital Humanities, we offer applicants an opportunity to submit a draft for us to review. And comment upon. It's not part of the formal review process, but many applicants find it useful. We ask applicants to email sort of one file in a PDF, and in that file you can include a draft narrative, the preliminary work plan and course outline, and even a preliminary budget or budget sketch. Now, if you don't have all of those elements, you don't have to have all of those elements, rather, to send us something. For the Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities, the draft deadline is December 15th, so it's coming up. But as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be perfect, so send us what you have so that we can respond to it and begin a conversation. And always remember that a draft is just a draft. And as you're preparing your applications, as you may be working on your drafts right now, I just also want you to be aware of some other additional resources that we in the Office of Digital Humanities has pulled together. In particular, my colleague, Hannah Alpert Abrams, has gathered all of our materials, our guidance materials, our blog posts, our navigator documents onto one handy page. You'll also want to sort of take a look at those sample projects, the database of funded projects. And of course, we want you to reach out to us if you have any questions about your project or any piece of the application process. You should never hesitate to get in touch with us. We are here to help you. In fact, that's our job. We also want to encourage you, since you're here, if you're not thinking about the 2023 deadline and might be sort of have more in mind the 2024 deadline, you might consider volunteering to serve as a peer reviewer, whether for this program or another NEH program. It doesn't matter if you have never applied for an ODH grant before or not. If you'd like to send us your name and a short biography, maybe a link to your personal website, or perhaps if you're at a college or university or departmental page, this can be the best way to learn about the application process, as well as learning about the sort of variety of work that's being done across the digital humanities today. So we're wrapping up, I promise. Key dates to keep in mind. As I mentioned, the next deadline is February 15th, 2023. Applications must be submitted by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time through the grants.gov portal. Now, grants.gov is not managed by NEH, so we encourage you to start this submission process early, again with your grants office or your office of sponsored projects or programs. They will be submitting your application on your behalf. If you do find an error in the application after it was submitted, you can actually resubmit the entire application with the corrected and complete materials, as long as you do so before the deadline closes. So if you find a mistake, if you find a mistake after a week or 10 days or even 2 days after the deadline closes, unfortunately, that is too late and you'll have to wait for the next deadline. So that's another reason to submit those applications early. We will accept drafts up until December 15th, 2022. So please do send in something, really anything by that date. It doesn't have to be complete. And the project can start, as I mentioned, anytime between September 2023 and September 24. Although, to be honest, most institute award periods have a start date closer to September 2023 to give the project team plenty of time for publicity, recruiting, participant selection, and then the active institute and follow-up activities. And particularly if you're proposing multiple versions of your institute, you'll want to give yourself plenty of time. Although if give yourself a break as well. You don't have to, if this is your first time applying to this program, you don't have to apply for multiple iterations of an institute. You could try something out and then apply at later dates if you're really satisfied with that offering. Let me conclude by reminding you that my colleagues and I are here to help you as you prepare to submit an application to the Institutes for Advanced Topics program. Here's our contact information. We do ask that you send email to odh@neh.gov. I promise we respond to those emails. We do check that email box every day, so please do get in touch. So that's the sort of the active slide-based part of the webinar, but I'm also here to answer any questions that you might have. You can either raise your hand and I can recognize you, or you can put notes in the chat as well. But I do hope that you'll consider, if not the 2023 deadline, the 2024 deadline. We're really happy with this program. It's had some amazing sort of ripple effects. Participants in these programs have gone on to publish articles related to their participation. They've proposed their own projects that began at one of these institutes that's gone on to get funding in either the Office of Digital Humanities or elsewhere within the NEH. They've built links and partnerships with many of the Institute's faculty who can then go on to write, say, letters of support or commitment for additional projects. So it's a great way of leveraging your own expertise and your institution's own expertise and resources and infrastructure to really sort of build out that community. Oh, and you are in luck. In fact, one of our program officers in the Office of Digital Humanities, before she joined us, actually ran several of these Institutes for Advanced Topics in the Digital Humanities. And so Sheila noted that it's really rewarding to run one of these programs, and the networks generated from these institutes are beneficial for everyone. I'm always amazed when I'm at a meeting or something and someone says, oh, I attended an institute in 2011 and here I am now. And I think that's fantastic. That's the intent of this program. Catherine Stein asks, thank you so much for sharing all this guidance. Can you speak to the time frame for draft review? When would you expect to get input on the submitted drafts? Well, with a draft deadline of December 15th and the holiday season, I suspect we'll try to get drafts back to you by January 15th at the latest, although I know we'll try to get back to you earlier than that. And some of us even may try to schedule some phone calls with you as well. Guidance on compensation and project evaluation in the NOFO. Yes, the guidance on compensation is in the NOFO and in the budget section in particular, and the project evaluation section is in the guidance in the narrative part of the notice of funding opportunity, or the directions for preparing the narrative. Yeah, we don't have a subscribed amount. There's no set amount that every participant should receive. The nature of this program is such that it doesn't work to provide a set amount, but estimate sort of how if you were a participant yourself, they are choosing to participate in this and are giving up something else. So something to honor their participation in this institute would be very appropriate. And then, of course, if it requires travel to a particular location, think very hard about travel costs, where they might stay. Does your institution have, say, summer housing or a housing office that can help participants find housing? Those are the sorts of details you'll want to describe in the application. Any other questions? And as I mentioned, we'll be making this webinar and the slide deck available as soon as possible. And I'll let you all know that when it is available in case you want to share it with your colleagues. But I hope that you'll consider directing one of these. We can stick around for a few more minutes in case a question occurs to you. Yes, thank you, Amanda. That's a great question. Are there examples of previously funded applications? on the website? And the answer is yes. On that program resources page, as you sort of scroll down under the notice of funding opportunity, under the frequently asked questions, under the budget guidance, there's a whole set of applications from previously funded offerings. Now, do keep in mind the requirements in the application may have changed over time. So use these as models, not as samples. You want to, of course, always follow the directions of the current notice of funding opportunity. But those are great examples of how they made compelling arguments for the need for their institute and that they were the right team to offer it. Yeah, we just added a new one, actually. One of the most recently funded ones is now available. And then we have some ones from previous years as well. But those really do give you a sense of the breadth and range of the types of offerings that this program has supported over the years. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you are inspired somewhat to think about leading one of these. They're really meaningful. I've been able to talk to directors over the years, and many of them have mentioned it's been one of the more meaningful professional activities they've done over their professional career. So, but it's really sort of stepping up and saying, I am an expert, or I am bringing together experts in this area, and I am willing to leverage the resources of my institution to really offer and build a community. It's setting you and your institution up as a leader in a certain space within the digital humanities, and I think that's really terrific. So I hope today really piqued your interest in perhaps offering one of these institutes. It's also a great way of introducing others to the offerings of your institution as well. They may not have realized that you are so very strong in a particular space. And if your institution is investing a lot, say in data analytics, what does that mean for the humanities, and what can you bring to bear on that? But if you don't have any questions, we can I said from 2 to 3, we can certainly end a little bit early. You don't need to stick around. I see some folks are already starting to excuse themselves, but I want to thank you all for joining us today, and do reach out if you have any questions as well.